Hi everyone, Zach here, and welcome to Lesson 10 in this series on developing a survival game. This is the first lesson in Section 2 of this series. In Section 2, we'll be setting up our inventory and item system. In this video in particular, we'll be doing our inventory prep and creating our item master. This series has been brought to you by my Patreon sponsors. That said, open up your project and let's make a start. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the engine for Section 2 of our survival game. In this section, we'll be working on our inventory system. Unfortunately, unlike Section 1, a vast majority of this section, we will not be able to see the progress of our work. We won't be able to test things. So I've decided that in this video, we'll have something at least that we can see that we're on the right track with. The other videos in this section, for the most part, we have to just sort of trust they work. And there are three ways I could have taught this section. One, I could have just done it in the order in which I would create the functions knowing what functions I need, which is actually how I originally did it. And when I lost the original recording files and the original project file, I saw that as an opportunity because that was the one part I really didn't like about this tutorial series. It made it really hard to understand what was going on. The other option is to approach it from the logical build structure of where I can walk you through the logic. And the third approach is to go through the process of actually having created the system from scratch. The last two are the best approaches. The third one is just not good when I'm trying to teach principles and trying to teach certain material, and would be better in the RTS series. So I've decided to go with the logical approach design of this series. So that said, we will, unfortunately, and even with the third choice, we wouldn't be able to see anything while we're working on it. We're going to be stuck with this, okay, we can't see much. Now that said, we will try to debug along the way to make sure things are working, and I will include those, which is not something I did in the original or in the second recording of this video. Technically, this is the fourth recording of this particular video, but that's because for some reason my engine glitched out in the middle of recording. So, all of that said, and wow, I'm already 2 minutes into recording, what we're going to do is we are going to start by making an enum. So we're going to go to core, we're going to go to our enums folder, and we're going to make a new enum type called E_item types. Let's just pop that open. And we're going to have 4 enumerations in here. The first enumeration will be consumable. These are things that we can consume. That said, some things will be, I'll explain as we get into inheritance, never mind. The second type will be weapon. The third type will be equipment. And actually, no, I am going to explain what I was about to say. Some things, like equipments, are also consumables. So some things will fall under multiple hats. This is just the sort of general hat. And the last one will be tool. Go ahead and save this. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to create 2 structures, but we're not going to do anything with them quite yet. We will in this video, but we're just going to create them so that they are there for us to play with. So the first thing we're going to do is create a folder called structures. And in here, I'm going to create a structure under blueprint. I don't know why that took me so long to remember. And I'm going to name this first one F, because F is the UE4 C++ identifier for a structure, inventory slots. And I just want to pause here. One thing I want you to walk away knowing is that structure. I'm pointing at my screen like you can see what I'm doing. This structure that we just created, this is the inventory. This is the inventory system. This thing is what's going to house, when you open up your inventory and you see all the slots, that is that. It's not the visual representation of it. This is the data representation. The next thing we're going to do is another structure. So again, F_item details. These will be stored in our items, and they're common details across all of our items. Now go back up to core. We're going to create a new folder called actors. Please let me create it. So far I haven't run into the engine bug that I had on the last recording, which is making me feel more comfortable. We're going to have 2 folders in here by the end of this section. The first one will be items. Let's just create that first. And in here, we're going to create a blueprint class of type actor. And this will be BP item master. All right, Control S, save everything, or Control Shift S to save everything. And now we're gonna go back to our structures, and now we're gonna work on them. I don't know why those didn't save. I'm just gonna very paranoid click save all a few times. All right, I wanna open my inventory slots first. I'm just gonna pin this up here. In my inventory slots, I'm gonna have two variables. And the first one is going to be item class. Keyword is class. So I'm going to click Boolean here, and very carefully, don't try to get ahead of me here unless you know why I stressed the word class a second ago. I'm going to type in BP item master. I am not going to select it. I am going to mouse over it. And here we have object reference, class reference, soft object reference, and soft class reference. Now, if you haven't worked out, we're going to use one of these two class references. Now, in video 9's prep, I included some documentation on what soft references are. We're just going to use a class reference for now. If you want to try using soft references, read through the documentation I included and see if you can work out how to do it. The second variable here is amount in slot. So remember, these are our slots, and actually I'm going to rename this. It's inventory slots singular. And yes, the singular actually is a important naming convention for what I want to do with this, because we will have a slots variable. So inventory or amount in slot, and this is an integer. This is telling us in this particular part of our inventory, so if we have 10 slots in our inventory, we can hold 10 items, how many of this item is in this particular slot. So some items, say like armor, weapons, equipment, can't stack. You can only have one in a slot. Some items, say ammo, food, miscellaneous junk, you can have multiple of. So this will tell us how much is actually in that slot. And if there's nothing in the slot, then the slot's empty. All right, go ahead and save that. We can close this out. We've actually made the inventory. That is the inventory. Of course, we have to do a lot more to make it functional, but hey, that's the inventory. So next, open up item details. And I'm just gonna pull this down a bit so I have a bit of room. And this is going to be just a lot of variables that each item is going to have a sort of response to. Sometimes it'll be true, false, sometimes we'll have to fill something in, what have you. And the first thing we need to know first off is what category does this item really belong to? Or what is its master category? And this will be E item types, so the enumeration we just made. We will default it to consumable. In fact, we're only going to change 2 of the defaults in our entire set. Next, we will have B is harvestable. And this is, of course, because of the B, a Boolean. All this is saying is this something that we can have to hit a button to pick up, or do we auto pick it up? And in most cases, a lot of our items will be something we have a prompt for. But say we have a mining system or a resource gathering system, it's gonna automatically pick those items up. So if you ever play like No Man's Sky and you're shooting the mining laser at a tree or a weird plant thing, and you suddenly have all these items in your inventory, that is automatically picking it up. That's what I mean when I say, we might have something like that. Next, we're gonna have another Boolean, which is B is consumable. And this is when we want to ourselves use an item to do something in particular with it. So if we want to eat it, we want to equip it, we want to use it. Some items that we use aren't consumable. So like maybe our flashlight batteries or our ammo won't be consumable, but will be consumed. Hopefully that makes sense. Basically, this is consumable when we as the player have to make the choice to consume the item. Next, we have B, so another Boolean, is stackable. This is if an item can be put in a stack of the same type. So again, you might have some things like weapons, armor, flashlights, equipment that you can't stack. You can only have one per slot. Then you might have things like, say, batteries, ammo, resources, junk that you can have multiple of in one slot, and those are stackable items. Next, we're gonna have a item name. This is the display name of the item. So since it's a display name and localization, and I'll explain what I mean by that as we start setting up the localization stuff, we are gonna set this to text. Next, we're gonna have an item icon. So this is the visual representation of our item in our inventory system. So it's gonna be a texture 2D, and you want texture 2D with a weird sort of alpha canvas map there. And you'll have that down there saying none, that's fine. And next we're gonna have the first variable we're gonna modify. So we're gonna create another variable that will be item, or sorry, I'm just gonna call this description, not item description. This is the on-screen visual description of said item. It will be of type text. I'm going to click the little chevron next to description to open this up. And I'm going to select multi-line text. This will get longer when I do that, if you're following my mouse. If you're not, I just pointed to the description on the bottom of the screen. Now, I have found that if I don't do this here, that if I don't know what I'm about to do, that it is hard to get the multi-lines to actually show up in the items. So I'm going to create dummy code or dummy text here. I'm just going to type in the word line 1. I'm going to hold shift enter to go down to another line. Line 2, shift enter, line 3, and I will stop with 4 lines of text. We will, of course, replace this text in our items. Next, we're going to have something for our encumbrance system, and that is our item weight. How much does the item weigh? And we'll be doing this as a float. Next, after that, we will have another text, and this is our consumed text. So things that are consumable, when we want to use it, we're gonna have a on-screen text that says what we can do with it. Equip it, eat it, combine it, whatever. Whatever that is, it's gonna go in here. And finally, the last variable we need, second to last variable is, it is our last variable, is our max stack amount. Now, this is the other variable we're going to default. This is type integer. Even unstackable items need a max amount. So that max amount for unstackable is our default value, which is 1. We need to be able to hold one of those types of items. Now, if you want something that can't be picked up, you can override this in that particular item. All right, that done, go ahead and save it. Next, what we are going to do is we are going to set up the communications between our item master and our player. So all I'm going to do is go to my interface. So core, interfaces, player character, and in here, I'm just going to minimize this. I'm going to create a new function called set is overlapping. This will go into a category called item details, and this is going to be an event. So how do you tell if a function in a interface is an event or a true, or what we traditionally think about as a function? If there's no return node, then it is an event. All right, so for set is overlapping, we're gonna have one input, and this will be b set overlap. You might want to name the set overlap state or what have you. We're just going to compile real quick. We're going to create another function, and this is get is overlapping, and this is going to be one of our impure getters. So we are going to have a return on this, and that is b is overlapping. Next, we're going to have two more related to our actual event when we cross over an item. And the first one will be, and these are events, trigger harvest prompt. Item details again, and this will have two inputs. I'm just gonna do the first one real quick, which is item actor. Now, I've mentioned in my rant, I've mentioned in the documentation, my rant, by the way, is a rant for the RTS tutorial series, video 102's rant. Mentioned it in the prep video for 9, gave documentation for this, have cited up and down about proper use of interfaces. Going to stress something here. I could, being the operative word, do item master. That would be bad. I will be hard loading item master somewhere if I do that. Instead, I am going to use inheritance per the prep video for today and all the stuff I was getting on about in video 9 and go for actor. So I'm gonna look for this little beige circle of actor. Get used to me saying little beige circle. I will hopefully say circle correctly. I will be saying that a lot in this series. The next is going to be my item details, and this is going to be of our F item details. I'm just gonna save that. I've put this in stats instead of item details. Now I'm gonna resave it. And finally, we're gonna have our last event, and this is the easiest one to make, and this is end harvest prompt, and just put that in stats. So really quickly, what we're doing is we're overlapping with the item. We're confirming that we're overlapping with the item. We're setting a prompt onto the screen, which we'll do down the road. We're gonna just use this for debugging today. And we're ending the on-screen prompt. Go ahead, compile, save. Now, what we're going to do before we can test that out is we are going to set up a dummy item to pick up. We won't be able to pick it up, but we'll be able to see that we can interact with it. So I'm going to go to my items. I'm going to go to my item master first, because we need to set up our item master. Remember, inheritance, all the children of this class are going to inherit everything that's in here. So the first thing I want to do with this item is I want to turn off start with tick. This will never tick. The second thing I want to do is I want to give a mesh to this item. Now, this item in particular isn't going to have a mesh, but it's going to have a mesh. That will make sense in 1 second. So I'm going to hit add component and type in static mesh. Hey, we gave it a static mesh. I'm actually going to rename this as item mesh. I'm going to select my item mesh and drag it over my default scene root. And look, we have an item mesh. It's a static mesh. But we don't have one. There is nothing set here. And we are not going to set something here. It will be blank. That's fine. The children will inherit item mesh and it will override this none. That's what we're looking to do. The next thing we need to do is actually give it a collision area. So we're going to search for the word box. And we have box collision. We will take box collision and just name it box. All right, so this is the in-world representation, our pickup area, and the item that's hidden that we can't see. Just to give you an idea. Well, okay, now that's way too big to actually see something. Give me a second. So let's say our item is this giant cube. There we go. Unfortunately, we haven't set up our collision sphere to be, or collision box to be big enough to see what's happening. That's the next thing we're going to take care of, actually. Otherwise, this gets really weird. But the item will be in the center of that collision area. When you cross into it, you'll either automatically pick it up or you'll be prompted to pick it up. All right, next I'm going to create a couple of variables that are needed. The first one is our item details. This, of course, will be of our F, item details. I'm going to put this in a category called master. The next will be our item class. And this is just useful for passing information on. We're literally going to take the class of the item. Right now, the class of this item is BP item master. But we are just going to search for our BP item master. And the reason why we're doing this is we are going to be using the item master as our pickup, but we don't want to store the item master in our inventory. So remember if we go back to our structures for a minute here, inventory slot, this is of item master. We can store the children in here, but we don't want to just store item master. So we need to say, hey, this item you're picking up really isn't item master, it's this particular child. And this will also go into our master folder. Next, I need to say how many of them we're picking up at one time. So even if it is something not stackable, there might be more than one of them on the ground that we can pick up. So I'm going to create a variable called amount to add. So this is the amount to add to our inventory, or to attempt to add to our inventory. We're actually going to have some caveats to that later on. And this will be of type integer. And I'm going to put it in a category called world settings. I don't know why I made that instance editable. However, this one, our amount to add, we do want to make it exposed on spawn. We do want to be able to edit it per instance when we place it in the world. So I'm just going to compile and save. We are going to default the amount to add to 1. So that we always have something that we're trying to pick up. And next what we're going to do is actually make this a dynamic box. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to go to our construction script. And this is actually where in my last recording the engine bugged out on me. So I'm going to get my static mesh. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to get my box just to show you what's happening. I'm going to start with the box and I want to set box extent. I could just plug some numbers in, and originally that's what I used to do. Yeah, that doesn't work too well. I'm going to set my extent. I am going to tuck this under here for a moment. I'm going to give myself a bit of room. Now I'm going to take my item mesh. And what I want to do is I want to get its local bounds. How big is this mesh? So get local bounds. This returns the bounds of the mesh, the size of it, a min and max value. So we want the max. And what we're going to do is we are going to do vector multiplied by vector. And then we are going to take this vector multiplied by vector and just plug it into our box extent here. Now, I am going to create some default values that we will be overriding, but what we're going to do this, if I just line that up a bit better, is I'm going to pull on, actually I'm going to put the defaults in, just so I have the defaults already preloaded. 0.75, 0.75, 0.5. So we're reducing our X and Y by a quarter, and we're reducing our Z in half. All right, next, what I am going to do is I'm going to pull off of here and I'm going to promote to variable, and this is custom collision size. So even though it's not the actual collision size, it's how we're going to customize our collision size. So I am going to add this to master because it is something we do need to set. I am going to break vector. I'm actually going to unpin that for a second. I'm going to pin that back in and put a reroute in. Gonna put another reroute there. Go. Line that all up. And I'm just gonna move that way. I want to also then realign the collision box so that it isn't suddenly floating either halfway through the item or floating double the length down the item. So I'm gonna do add local offset. I'm gonna set this to teleport. I am going to plug that into there. I am going to split this structure. I'm gonna put a reroute into this. Please move, thank you. And I'm gonna take the Z value, and that's the only thing we want to adjust. All right, I'm gonna Control S save this. And now we can get on to the main show for getting this set up. I'm gonna go over to my event graph. In my event graph, I am going to delete everything but event play. We actually will have stuff for event play. We're just not gonna have it for now because even though I know the bugs that we're gonna have, I'm gonna leave some in so we can work through them and so you can see the logic of what you need to do. In fact, we're gonna have a lot of little bugs, and I'll point out some of them as we go along and let you kind of work out, all right, how might we solve for this? So I'm gonna select the box, I'm gonna scroll down on the right-hand menu, I'm gonna find on component, begin overlap, I'm gonna select the box again, and I'm gonna find on component, end overlap. All right. So with these two, these are our two main events that we care about across all our items. Well, that and what we're going to put up here. But for now, these are the two we care about. What a lot of people do is they'll pull off the other actor and do cast to BP player character, whatever the thing is called. That's going to load a copy of the player character into our item, into memory. We don't need that. Yeah. No. We don't want that. Instead, what we're going to do is we are going to use this to communicate between our item and the player. And we're going to do a set is overlapping. Now, the beautiful part about the set is overlapping, and this is true despite the error that actually this creates, is that only the player, because that's the only place we've implemented that interface, can activate this. We're going to set this to true, by the way. Now, I said there's an error. There is. There is something we need to do before we do this. And I'm going to let you work out what that error might be. But I'm just going to tell you we will fix it. We will fix it by the end of this section. It will be probably the second or second to last video in this section. So do be mindful that there is a bit of a small problem there. And that's fine. This will work for our test today though. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to confirm that the player is actually overlapping. And we're going to do get is overlapping. That's why I put those reroutes in. And I'm going to put another reroute in just so I can bring this up without the lines looking all weird. All right, please plug in. Thank you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull off this is overlapping and go for branch. I'm not hitting B or just searching branch off the execute because if I search branch off the is overlapping and there's nothing plugged into that execute, it auto plugs it in. All right, next what we're going to do is we're going to create a custom event for this true. And we're just going to come down here and it's a custom event. And this event is overlap trigger. Two things will happen on this event. Either we'll trigger the prompt. So, hey, hit this button to pick up this item. Or we will trigger the actual pickup event if it's something we automatically pick up. So let's just call this overlap trigger. Oh, I did do, I made a comment in my third attempt at this one and I was still bugging out that, hey, I didn't do the Dark Souls thing and spell lap with 2 P's. All right, so if we are overlapping this and we're, as I said, we're either gonna pick up the item or we are going to get a trigger alert. Sorry, we're gonna get a harvest prompt alert. So what we're gonna do is determine, well, which one do we need? So we're gonna use a branch to do that. We are gonna get our item details. We are going to break our item details. We're going to take this is harvestable pin and plug it into there because the is harvestable is how we determine is this something we need a prompt for or auto pick up. We're going to hide the unconnected pins. We're going to just tuck these under here. The false will be the auto pickup. The true will go to the prompt. And we're just going to very quickly do a dummy prompt. So get player character. Again, this doesn't cast, this doesn't load anything. We're good. Actually, it does, but not in here, and it's really agnostic, or minimalist is the term I was looking for. Plug the execute into that prompt. Just gonna put a reroute in. Please move. Ooh, Unreal, you are testing me over the last 24 hours. All right, it's the little things that are getting to me. Item actor is really easy. It's self. Even though it's of actor type, we're a child of actor type. Mouse in the corner of the screen pointing at actor there. I'm going to tuck that under there. And I'm just going to take this item details, duplicate it, and plug it into item details. All right, now let's just very quickly take care of what happens when we end the overlap. So I'm just moving this down because I don't like how close that was. Well, when we end our overlap, we want to make sure that it's the player that's moving away. Hint for something that's wrong here. And again, only the player can respond to this, and to this, and to this, because only the player has those interface. It has that interface with those functions. So we're going to use this other actor again. We're going to get is overlapping, and we're going to use the message one. And I'm going to put a couple of reroutes. My test file actually doesn't have the fix for the problem up here in it, or my last recording file doesn't. That was bad of me. I should have put that in. So again, there's something you're going to want to do here to make this even more efficient. Keyword is efficient for a reason. We want to get is overlapping, and we want to make sure that this is something that's actually put the prompt on screen. Why? Well, if you're remember this down here, saying, you know, we automatically pick this up. If your inventory is full, if you can have a full inventory, we'll be setting up so we can, then we won't pick up non-harvestable items automatically. They'll just float on the ground. We come back, we can then pick them up. And we can even set this up to be dynamic so that it actually then gives us the prompt after we've attempted once. But that we'll come back to that later on. We don't want to end a prompt for something that didn't have a prompt, even if we failed to pick it up. Because if there is no prompt, it's kind of going to go, why are you trying to end a prompt? There's nothing there to end. So we're going to just duplicate this up here. And this is the second condition we need to check. So all we're going to do, and unfortunately this won't plug directly into the execute, but whatevs, is make sure that it's, hang on, I'm just going to write it out this way. Check that the player is no longer overlapping. That was the wrong thing. And item is harvestable. All right, if that is true, what we are going to do is we are going to get our player character. Also, as a side note, whoops, that was the wrong thing. As a side note, I will often say, or did often say, player controller in the last recording of this. Unless I say I mean player controller. Assume if I say player controller, I mean player character. Just as a heads up. We are going to end harvest prompt. We're going to plug that into our true there. We're going to put a lovely little reroute in there. Please move reroute. Thank you, reroute. And we are going to pull off this reroute and do set is overlapping. We are going to set this to false. All right, there we go. And just really quickly, I'm going to make one more comment, which is determine if, hang on. There we go. I want the first two there. Set and determine if player is overlapping. All right, Control S, save everything, compile, which automatically saves in this version. I am going to move these just a little bit further down, because, yeah. I am not a fan of how close those are together. There we go. Also, self should be above item details if I'm being accurate. So I tend to put these in the order in which the pins show up. So target is player character, self is item actor, and item details is, well, item details. All right. Next, what I'm going to do is close out the interface. I'm going to go back to my core, go to my character, go to my character player here, and also, just really quickly, I noticed this if you didn't watch a review video, I forgot to plug in the output. So plug in the output in your pause hunger timer. It's literally the only change between section 1 and section 2. Over here on the right-hand side of our player character, what I am going to do is I am going to set my events. I am going to do a event, set is overlapping, and we have a whole bunch of these. Ignore the fact there's a bool there. I thought I deleted that from the earlier attempt that went buggy. So we want the event set is overlapping. I am going to make sure that this isn't being referenced anywhere. I am going to delete it. I am going to compile, and I am going to remake that. So I'm going to pull off this set is overlapping. We're going to promote to variable, and it is b set is overlapping item. All right. And I'm going to put that in my boolean category. The next thing I'm going to do is my trigger harvest prompt. For our debugging purposes, all we are going to do is do a print string, and our print string will say, hello, I'm an item. I'm an item. We're going to do something very similar for our end harvest. Again, you want the add event version. And I'm just going to, actually, I'm going to take more time. I'm going to do a print string, and it will be bye. All right, we are nearly ready to test this out to make sure this is working. What I'm going to do next is go back to my main editor window, go back to my content browser, go to core, go to actors, go to items. I'm going to right click this item master. I'm going to select create child blueprint class. And this will be BP item test 01. Please let it work. Oh, yes. Sorry, that was because I had a bit of an issue earlier. So, well, we have no collision area because 0 times 0 is 0, or 0 times anything is 0. Let's add in a cube. I'm going to use a 1 millimeter cube. Now, if I go up, you can see the collision box is in the center there. That's no good. So I'm going to select the item test itself, and I'm going to set my collision box to 1 by 1 by 1. And now we have a collision volume kind of around it. Interesting. Actually, I'm going to set that to 0.5. It should always be 0.5 on that one. I'm going to set this to 1.5 by 1.5. I'm just actually going to default this out to 0. Oh, no, to 1. And that's fine. We're going to set the item class to item test 01. We are going to set this to is harvestable. I will clean up a little bit on what's going on with the fact that's raised too much. That is from our move. So if we go back to our item master, go to our construction script, that is due to this. It's added in because for something down the road it is needed. Let's just go into our map though and place our item test into the world. I'm just going to raise it up a bit. And now we're ready to test and see if our item actually is triggering the response. All right, so we didn't trigger the response real quick. What I'm going to do is go into my item master. I am going to select the set is overlapping. We're going to add a breakpoint, and I'm going to walk forward. We're triggering this. Oh, hang on. I know exactly what's wrong. Go back to your player character. Go to your interfaces. It's the check. Go to your item details. Set is overlapping. Plug set is overlapping item in. Compile, save, and hello, I am an item. Just under that F1 thing. I'm going to back away. You can see it saying bye. Hello, I am an item. Bye. Hello, I am an item. Bye. So we are getting our communication between our actor and our object. All right. That takes us through what we need to do in today's video. I'm just going to make sure that the UI still works from another error I had. Hello, I'm an item. So, if you've enjoyed setting up your item master and the start of your inventory system, if you're looking forward to making your inventory system, go ahead and hit that like button down below. It lets me know I'm bringing you content that you enjoy and appreciate. In addition, hello, I'm an item. In addition, I lost track of that joke. Wow. It lets people, it helps with the YouTube algorithms, because YouTube, like Dunkin', or like America, runs on likes. But that's Dunkin' with America. Again, I am still missing those bagels right now. All right. All of that said, if you want to make sure that you're here when the next video gets released for our inventory system, make sure to hit the subscribe, and I'm not going to make the usual joke of the mannequin, and notify bell. If you don't hit the notify bell, YouTube might not tell you when that video is out. If you want a copy of this project or you just want to support this channel, consider becoming a Patreon supporter. Patreon supporters at upper tiers get instant access to any ongoing YouTube project. At other tiers, Patreon supporters get access once the project is completed on YouTube. All of that said, feel free to join our Discord community or, post questions down below. I look forward to seeing you in the next tutorial, and I beat the hunger timer. Hope that you have a wonderful, hello, an item, day.